Revolution.
Today it's great to be joined in the studio by Jonathan Nunn. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Chris. Nice to be with you.
With you. Been a few weeks since we've seen you, and great to catch up. And a lot's been happening in West Northamptonshire. And one of the things that we wanted to go to first, because it is something that a lot of people care about, it's the state of our roads in the county. And it feels like we're at that kind of time of the year where the winter has done its worst. It seems to be dragging on a bit, and the weather seems to be finally starting to improve. But this is kind of the low point of the year as far as road surfaces, potholes, dodgy driving conditions. And it's always when you're on a slightly less familiar road that you're not sure when the potholes are coming up, when it's nighttime, when maybe there's some leaves on the road, and you just go over a massive pothole, and you just hear your suspension going and your tyres exploding, and it's a nightmare. So the council have been doing something about it, and your shiny new JCB Pothole Pro has been at work for a little while now. It was announced I think second half of last year.
Yeah, it's almost a year, I think, knocking on towards a year.
Yeah, so how has that been going? What's the update on that?
I mean, that machine's going well. That's a part of the jigsaw, really. I mean, look, everybody knows that the roads are in a rotten state. You can't really describe it any other way. In part, a national problem. Certainly, we're as bad as anybody locally, I think, in West Northants, and that's really bad news. And I think what's worth saying, your point is a good one, really, about the time of year. That does make it particularly bad. You can't really fix potholes as well in the winter as you can in the spring and the summer. So we are about to kick into a big part of the year, really. There's like a bulge in the amount of work that's done in the upcoming year. But I think it's important to look at context, really. We shouldn't duck the fact that roads have been in decline for years and years and years. That's both nationally, with the amount of money that councils have to spend on them, and certainly here in Northamptonshire, we've seen the amount of maintenance. However much people have felt able to spend on it, it's not kept pace. Our roads have deteriorated to the standard they're in now, which I think is an all-time low. And what's the cause of that? Well, sometimes there's a perception, wrongly, that the council don't care or the council haven't noticed. And look, I and just about everybody who works at the council lives and drives around the area. So I see it too. And it's awful. I don't like it at all. Biggest challenge we've got, of course, is money. We have services. The bulk of our services, you cannot necessarily see them being delivered. It's like an iceberg, the council's budget. The top bit is the bit you might see as a member of the public. You see your bins being collected or you see the roads being repaired. Below that iceberg is a huge amount of statutory services. By far the biggest proportion, it's something like 80% of our budget that goes on children in care and adults in care. And these are what are called statutory services. We have a strong legal obligation to deliver on these, really. Some of those we're working hard to catch up on because of increases in demand.
Yeah.
Perhaps we'll come back to that area a little later.
It's widely known that budgets are more stretched now than they ever have been.
Yeah,
and I think the question is, where do you prioritise potholes and keeping the roads looking good in terms of all of that kind of bigger picture?
And this is a question I ask people. I carry around normally with me a copy of our budget headline, and I say, well, which of these areas would you take that money from? Council's like anything else. Yes, council tax has gone up, just as everything else has, but it still leaves us a shortfall. In the last 4 years, we've taken £90 million a year out of the operating cost of the council. That's without affecting frontline services. The performance of the contract, the Kia contract, which maintains our road, we have performance indicators. We're pushing them hard. We've also now had difficulty recruiting, but have now got in place highways inspectors, which helps us independently go out and check the quality of the work. People say to me, are you getting the best out of the contract? I believe we are, but we're pushing and pushing and pushing to measure the productivity. Then there's a couple of other things we're doing. You mentioned the Pothole Pro machine. It is a great bit of kit. Basically what it does is, instead of pepper potting small potholes, in no more time, it will sort of skim a whole stretch of road and do a much deeper and more lasting repair.
So are there different levels of quality of repairs? Is there a sort of a sticky plaster option that will keep it?
I think, Philip, I'm slightly layman on this, but what we do see, we've all seen potholes that get repaired and then in a relatively short period of time they pop back up again. Not forgetting, we have had an incredibly wet winter. That doesn't help. The Met Office will tell you it's one of the wettest winters on record or whatever. So that is a factor. But nevertheless, if you repair a small, sort of 12-inch pothole or whatever, there is a good chance it'll pop back up. What the JCB Pro machine does is, instead of just taking taking the 3 or 4 pepper potted potholes, it planes, a few metres of road, perhaps a decent stretch, and then leaves a more lasting repair. Now, that's worked well for us last year. When we saw it demonstrated at another council before we bought one, they were using around about 9 tonnes of road material, tarmac and all that sort of thing, to fill potholes each day. 9 tonnes a day. We've really worked hard to make it efficient. We had budgeted for 9 tonnes a day during the last financial year. We reckon we can actually get 16 tonnes a day filling holes behind it. So that's not double, but it's on the way towards it. It's a massive increase in the amount. So in the coming year, we've budgeted for 16 tonnes a day. So we should see that machine do a lot better repairs. You might recognise them. They're more sort of long rectangular repairs rather than the pothole type repairs.
And how are we doing with the sort of the bigger picture? Do you have a kind of a stats of how many potholes there are, how many have been filled? Are there more appearing quicker than they're getting replaced? How long is it going to take before you're kind of at a point where you're keeping up with the new ones?
I'll tell you some potentially bad news, which is if we wanted to completely resurface all of the roads, bring all of the roads in West Northants up to good condition, new type condition, it would cost somewhere between 200 and 250 million pounds.
So if you'd like to put your question to Jonathan, he's here with us in the studio until midday today. You can get in touch by emailing info@revolutionradio.com. You can ring us on 01604 800 961. You can also send us a text in the studio on 07852 961 961, and you can post a question on our social media, which is what we have had done by Lauren, who's been in touch, talking about provision for SEND children in the area, which is, as you know, a big, quite a hot topic at the moment. There was a big protest recently with a lot of the parents. And Lauren says, please could you ask Jonathan when we're going to see a genuine commitment to improving the severe SEND crisis we have here in West Northants, which includes not only more specialist placements and educational psychology assessments, but also an end to what she calls systemic parent blaming as an attempt to cover up the failure of services and justify the unmanageable number of tribunal appeals, which she says is due not to differences of opinion, but because the local authority gets it wrong in most of these cases, as is evidenced by the fact that they lose most of the cases. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, happy to answer that. And just to agree, I think on the tribunals, I think there's a number of things that come together there. One is the fact that because the system is so slow, we're on, the council is on its back foot from a start, really. Having failed to act on something, it's very difficult to defend yourself at tribunal. So I think I agree on that point. I think you'll see a genuine commitment. I'll show you a genuine commitment here today. It's a genuine commitment to improving it. It's not exactly the easiest thing, and I think there are a few things that contribute to that. One is, I think it's something like a 40% increase in applications for SEND assessments that we just can't keep up with, it's very, very challenging to get that far. Not everybody is unhappy. There's parents' networks where many are happy. Those that have been let down have been let down, and let down badly, are naturally not happy. And there's more to do. One of the challenges around this is, of course, on these SEND assessments, it's not just the council, other people play a part, NHS make assessments and so on, but nevertheless, for our part, we are behind. One of the challenges we find is getting the right staff, getting staff in who are happy to work in the environment. We've done a restructure of the department to make sure, to put it bluntly, that we're paying top dollar and giving the best opportunity. That's going on at the moment. I think it's at union consultation stage, which is something we have to do. We want it to be the best place to work. We also have found in other departments that the important part of attracting good people, getting them to stay, getting them to do a good job, is the culture and the environment of it. It's quite hard to get people who want to come and work in an environment where there are so many challenges. We've seen it in other departments, we've done this well. Our planning department had a similar challenge and we lost good staff in the first year. We turned that around in terms of a more positive culture, and now I think it's quite a nice place to work. Planners tell me it is, and that seems to be reflected in the fact that we've had more and more people join us to do the job. So we've partly got to achieve a similar sort of turnaround in the thing as well. If the key part to that question is commitment, there is no lack of commitment. Yesterday I met again personally with the director, what we call the people services, and said, look, we need something dramatic to happen here, something dramatic to happen. There is, again, a possible issue around money, but we've got to just invest. And again, the point that, do you say Lauren?
Yeah.
The point that Lauren makes is a valid one. If you're not dealing with things quickly enough, they then end up in tribunals and they end up being more expensive. My argument is, if we're going to be spending that money anyway, why aren't we spending that up front to put serious finances? Because it is a resources thing catching up. It is, to some extent, it's not just about money. It's about the people that you can bring in with the money. And my argument is, don't wait for a long period of time and then find that we're on our back foot in a tribunal with costs and expenses and possibly delivering a more expensive package, possibly because by then the young person has deteriorated even further. Let's put the money in up front. Let's get the people in there to equip the service, bring the service up to scratch, attract as many people as we can, catch up, and start giving young people the appropriate facilities that they need, rather than standing by and seeing delays cause deterioration in their state of well-being. So some of this also, another aspect of this, it's not a part of the jigsaw that Lawrence mentioned there, but some of it also is about pure capacity, special educational needs. We've now got, I think it's 5 or 6 existing schools where we've put SEND units on as extensions, and of course we're now cracking on with the Tiffield school. Tiffield school will accommodate somewhere between 230 to 250 young people. That depends on the severity of their needs or the extent of their needs. We're cracking on to do that as soon as possible. That's a really important thing, and it's important actually for everybody, not just for those children and parents who need that capacity, actually for everybody. At the moment there are some children being sent out of the county because that's the only available suitable placement, and I don't believe it's the right thing for a child to have, I don't know, a 45-minute drive in a taxi in the morning and a 45-minute drive in the evening. Not only is it not good for them, and is it going to hold back that child's development, it's not good for the family, and obviously for the rest of our residents who are taxpayers, it has additional costs.
Yeah.
One, because of those huge transport costs, and two, because clearly if you send a child to another council, they will charge more than if it were internal. So a part of that capacity jigsaw is building our own capacity in the way that we are. But it's a massive problem. I would probably consider it our number one problem in terms of priority. That, along with the thing we spoke about before, which is potholes. Some similarity, I suppose, in terms of money restrictions, but for me, the money restriction ends when you invest up front to get the people in, to get the service done quicker, to meet the needs of the child as quickly as is possible, and therefore give them better life chances. Our aim ultimately, of course, is trying wherever possible, depending on the needs and the situation of that child, to give them as fulfilling a life, to grow up as an adult who can live to whatever degree it is, as fulfilling a life, making a contribution, and living happily.
So you're quite happy to accept that there is a problem at the moment, and that work
nobody could deny that. Nobody could deny that. I think, like all things, it's worth remembering there are a significant proportion of those families who are happy with the service they've received from us and arrangements and so on. There's a lot of consultation going on with family groups. We had a conference a little while ago that I attended, probably quite a while now, over at Daventry, where a lot of parents came along and they were introduced to lots of other services, both those provided by the council and those provided by other organisations. So there is a lot going on in the background, but your fundamental point, which I won't duck, is that there are many families who are still families and young children who are being let down, and that's the bit that I promise you, if commitment is what you want, you have my commitment. That's what we're working on.
And you're in a dialogue with the people that are making the protests, and you're happy to listen to their point of view.
I'm not sure it's a relationship in which dialogue is terribly, is working terribly successfully, but no problem with it. I don't think there's a lack of understanding of what those issues are, and in terms of that wider dialogue with, I think it's something like 12,000 families in West Northants that have a child with special educational needs or disabilities. There is dialogue going on with that wider group, for sure.
Okay, because it's a tricky issue, isn't it? Because the proportion of families that are affected by this that have these children is quite a small proportion of the bigger pie, but the cost is quite high, and you've got to look at all of the money, the budgets and money, and obviously a lot of people, as you say, concerned about things like potholes that might seem trivial when you're looking at children's futures.
For many, I suppose that's that iceberg point that I made earlier. I think when we were talking about potholes, that the majority of the public see the small part of the iceberg, which is their bins being emptied or their potholes being fixed, and that's the bit above. Partly the special educational needs. It's not that it's a hidden problem and so on, but it tends to mean a great deal to those smaller number of families who are in that situation, of course. But it's unseen. It's completely unseen. And it's a good example to those who are saying, why don't just chuck more money at potholes, special educational needs. God forbid that we ever thought that was an area to take money away from. And there are few other areas that we can. If anything, to reiterate my point, it needs more money sticking in it. It's sticking into it in terms of getting more people in to get applications through, assessments done far more quickly, and children into the environment which they need in order to have their needs met.
Lots of questions coming in on social media. This is your chance to put your questions to Jonathan, and a lot of people in the area are quite concerned at the moment by the risk of flooding to their properties. We've had so much rain recently. It feels like it's been a bit of a monsoon season across the area, and lots of instances of people's homes getting flooded. And I know that the council are currently doing a consultation as they sort of review the flood management strategy. Yeah. What kind of ideas are coming up, and what kind of initiatives can we take to kind of reduce the risk to people's homes from flooding?
I mean, it's really challenging, isn't it? I mean, you're right. We've gone out to consultation on it. I think on that one, it's just closed. I think it's literally in the last day or so. It might have been yesterday that the consultation actually closed. I think we've had a reasonable response. I haven't looked specifically at people's suggestions. And a part of me says, well, look, we know what the problem is, because we do. We know where the flooding takes place. People tell us. The big stuff, like the flooding of Billing Aquadrome and around that area, of course, was huge news.
All those caravans were underwater for a while.
Dreadful. And to have happened yet again in a relatively short period of time. Over the last few years, we've had several floodings there. Some of the smaller local ones, it's interesting to hear. I'm sure people will tell us about things in there near Brook that perhaps we weren't aware of. But I think a big part of it is the change of weather. As you say, we've had one of the wettest winters for a long time. I'm not quite sure how long the Met Office would say that was. And we are seeing changing climate. I head up the council's efforts on sustainability, which is about economic and social sustainability, but above all on environmental sustainability. We are seeing these dramatic changes that impact on people's lives. And I don't know what we're going to do about Billing Aquadrome. There are a number of different theories as to what could be done, but it is technically classed as a sort of floodplain area. Got to do something pretty major. The council is meeting with the likes of Environment Agency and Billing Aquadrome owners. There was a meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago. I was hoping to get along, but it was just a clash with something else that I'd promised a bunch of residents to do for them, so I couldn't personally be there. But I think we've just got to try and come up with solutions. Really, I think. What will we hear from the consultation? There'll be a number of different ideas. I think the first thing is you've got to make sure if you're going to tackle a problem, you really understand what the extent of the problem is, where it's a problem, etc. So I think there'll be a whole host of anecdotal evidence coming in, or information coming in from residents, which will be a jolly good start. It's an area where it's one of many areas. I think I described earlier a couple of areas in the council where we weren't well equipped when we started, and it's taken a bit of time. People with specialist knowledge of flooding seem to be in really short supply. We've now finally got somebody in place. It's not the full team that we would want, I think, at this stage. So anybody out there listening who's got expertise in the area of flooding, come forward, come and talk to us, because it's a really important problem to tackle.
It is, and it might surprise people that you're asking, like, is there a doctor on the plane?
Is that anybody?
Kind of but surely are there not like environment agencies and people that?
Well, Environment Agency are a partner in this. Yes, absolutely, and of course, Environment Agency, have the ultimate responsibility for the river and for flooding and so on. But you see, where does the council fit in? Well, the council takes the view that anything that causes huge problems like this to our residents is important to us. We have some technical responsibility for flooding, so there's a mix of different responsibilities there. I think the Environment Agency would quite rightly say that floodplains are created in order to mitigate flooding, and it is sad that some of that Billing Aquadome sits within a floodplain, but nevertheless it's not acceptable to us just to see it continue and possibly worsen so that it's an annual event. Some action needs to be taken. My point there on the somebody on flooding, is there a doctor of the house? I like that phrase. There are a significant number of areas where staff are in huge demand. We get criticised if there's any thought that we might pay people too much, and by the way, we don't. We pay people fairly. We benchmark that against other councils, and then we put them through monthly performance management meetings to make sure that they're being effective. But there are certain areas. So a while ago we saw huge demand for people with planning expertise, particularly from the private sector. I think roughly at about the end of COVID time there seemed to be a time, and it was really difficult to recruit. Now we've addressed that partly by the fact we've got a better, if you like, a better run department. We've got a better culture in the department. It's a good place to work. But at the moment, amongst the areas that we're struggling to recruit, educational psychologists, which Lauren was referring to earlier, are very, very hard people to get hold of and to encourage to come and work for you. But people with expertise in flooding has proven to be another area. We'll get through it, and as you say, you can't beat the expertise of people like the Environment Agency who are part of that team.
Yeah. See, I would have imagined that there was some sort of long-term flood-proofing strategy, and it was more a case of not having the budget to do everything all at once. But you know what you would want to do if money was no object. But if you're saying, actually, we're not really sure how we're going to solve. I think probably areas like Billing Aquadome are particularly tricky because, as you say, it's on the floodplain. You need some sort of localised defences around the caravan park there, or try and persuade them to move it somewhere a bit safer, which wouldn't go down very well.
No, and you know what on earth do you do about that? What on earth do you do? It is a business. Ultimately, it's people's homes as well. So they live there, and they in most cases own the lodge or the caravan, and they rent the space that they're on or have a lease on it or something like that. A lot of people are heavily invested in that. At the same time, I know it's a business that is not necessarily, it's not a huge, megally profitable business and so on. It can be challenging running a business like that, and we're acutely aware of that and the need to cooperate with the business owners to find a way that lasts. Not every problem has an easy answer. In fact, I'll be honest with you, my experience at the council is all the easy stuff is done. That was done ages ago, long before I got here. What seems to be left largely is the difficult stuff. And this is a challenge. We don't know what the answer will be. What we show is a commitment to the fact we're going to work at it to try and find some sort of possible answer. As yet, and I'm not bang up to date because I haven't been involved in all of the sort of officer meetings that are going on with the Environment Agency, but at the moment I don't think we have a solution, but we've got to try and find one.
Absolutely, and it's not going to get any better in the future with global warming and climate change.
It's all going in one direction, Chris, isn't it? Without a doubt, yeah.
Okay, well, we're pretty much out of time now for this time, but thank you so much for coming in this morning, and I'm sure we will see you again next time. But if you do have any questions, you can always get in touch directly with Jonathan or with the council via the website. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.